The growth of our businesses, the safety of our cities, and the future of our nation depend on our children's earliest experiences.
Is there a connection between a business executive and a baby?
A military leader and a toddler.
A police officer and a preschooler?
Some pretty powerful people say there are. So much so that military leaders, business executives, and law enforcement officers are calling for greater investment in early care and learning to ensure our national security, keep us globally competitive, and reduce crime.
It comes down to how children develop. Child development is a dynamic, interactive process that is not predetermined. It's not all about genetics. Simply put, our brains are built, not born. Meaning whether or not we have the opportunity to realize our potential is based on our earliest relationships, experiences, and environments. Did you know that there are only 2,000 days?
2,000 days between the birth of a child and their first day of kindergarten.
This is the most rapid period of growth during our lifetimes.
So why does this matter?
How does this affect us?
In more ways than we ever realized before.
Would it come as a great surprise that our national security is counting on our children?
Military leaders are making early childhood a priority. Senior retired military leaders formed a national security organization called Mission Readiness to call for smart investments in America's children. Their top policy agenda item: expanding high-quality early childhood education programs.
Why is the military so interested in early childhood? 75% of Americans age 17 to 24 cannot meet the military's eligibility requirements. Only 1 out of 4 Americans are qualified.
There are 3 main reasons. These young adults cannot meet the physical requirements. They have a criminal record, or they didn't graduate from high school.
The military increasingly relies on high-tech systems and needs a skilled workforce to operate effectively, ready, willing, and unable to serve.
All of us want to live in safe and vibrant communities, which is why law enforcement officials are speaking up about early childhood issues. They have formed an organization called Fight Crime, Invest in Kids. This collection of police chiefs, sheriffs, and prosecutors are calling for greater investments in young children.
They want state and federal lawmakers to support high-quality early education programs as a critical strategy to reduce crime, lower corrections costs, and save taxpayers money.
They've seen firsthand the research that shows that at-risk children who do not attend high-quality early childhood programs are more likely to become chronic offenders as adults.
From this perspective, our spending is flipped. In the 2012-2013 fiscal year, North Carolina's Division of Child Development spent $266 million. In that same year, our Division of Corrections spent $1.38 billion.
We can help more children be school-ready, graduate and grow into productive citizens and valuable employees by investing in them on the front end of their development.
Early childhood not only influences the future of our military and the health of our communities, our national economy depends on the education of our youth. Many employers across the state have jobs that they can't fill. They are looking for skilled workers, but the demand outweighs the supply.
North Carolina businesses face these obstacles every day. Half of the American workforce does not have the skills needed to obtain or advance in a job. This is why business leaders and economists are advocating for greater early childhood investments.
The former Federal Reserve Chairman and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Institute for a Competitive Workforce understand that early childhood impacts our economic prosperity. Our global competitors are investing in young children.
The Chinese government recently made early childhood development a national priority. The U.S. must adapt to keep pace. Too many of our workers are not prepared to compete in a global market that requires a specific set of skills. In the past, we've emphasized academic skills, yet social and emotional skills are just as important.
A survey of business leaders found that employers view these soft skills as even more important to work readiness than traditional skills like reading, writing, and math.
In the workplace, these skills translate to honesty, trustworthiness, team building, effective communications, conflict resolution, and positive attitudes. The solutions to these challenges begin with the brain. The brain's foundation for all future learning is built during early childhood.
While the brain's cells are formed before birth, the connections, the wiring that forms the architecture, happens in infancy and early childhood. And how that wiring is formed, either as a strong or weak foundation, depends on each child's interactions with the world around him or her.
Let's look closely at what's happening during these early years. Every experience a baby has forms a neural connection in the brain. These connections, called synapses, form very rapidly in the early years, 700 synapses per second. They connect brain cells and form a network that influences everything from intellectual capacity to problem solving to language.
This graph shows when those connections peak for different brain functions. So much happens in those early years. The synapses that form for vision and hearing peak at just 4 months, language at 9 months, higher cognitive functions at 1 year, and the synapses not being used are shed.
The following video will help explain how early experiences are built into our bodies and brains, for better or worse, with lifelong consequences for learning, behavior, and health.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
You can see from the video that genes are only part of the equation. Experiences actually build our brains.
Just like building a house, it's much more cost-effective to build it right than to fix the foundation years after it's built. Now that we've seen all that happens during those first 5 years, it's easier to understand why there is such urgency and why military, law enforcement, and business leaders are serious about early learning.
The best part of the story is that we know what children need to build a strong foundation: good health, strong families, and quality learning experiences.
Health in the earliest years lays the groundwork for a lifetime of vitality. Children that participated in a high-quality early learning program that included health screenings and nutritional components had better adult health and less chronic disease, including lower levels of hypertension and obesity 30 years later.
Strong families are vital. Parents are a child's first and best teacher. So supporting parents has huge benefits to children and families. For example, voluntary home visiting programs provided by qualified professionals to parents, prenatally and/or with young children, reduce healthcare costs, improve school readiness and success, reduce need for remedial education, and increase family self-sufficiency.
Quality early learning experiences that begin at birth and continue through third grade can make all the difference. That's because the early years are so defining that by the time children turn 8, their third grade outcomes can predict future academic achievement and career success.
We've seen the benefits firsthand in North Carolina. Duke researchers found that third graders have higher reading and math scores and lower special education placements in counties that spent more money on Smart Start and More at 4, now NC Pre-K, when those children were younger.
What's really significant about the study is it found there was a positive impact for all children in the community, regardless of whether or not they were touched by a Smart Start or More at 4 program. This is what's known as a spillover effect.
Everybody wins when children have the early experiences that they need to thrive. And these benefits have real economic value. This graph shows Nobel Prize-winning economist James Heckman's research showing how dollars invested in early education have the greatest impact.
In each case, the majority of those returns are to the community, not just to the individual. So while the individuals who participate have better jobs, better education, and better lives, in terms of dollars returned from the investment, it is society that is the big winner.
This brief video shares some of Professor Heckman's findings.
Everything we know in economics says the return on investment in people, especially very young people, very, very high. Right now, a lot of economists don't have a clue of what's going on. I mean, a lot of economists, and probably me included. But when we start thinking about how to get fixes to get the economy started again, we have to be a little more careful than we've been in the past. We have a big emphasis now on potholes, infrastructure it's called. The new director of OMB, Peter Orszag, has actually written a definitive study of what the economic rate of return is to potholes. And he found that they're pretty low, actually. What I learned and became so important was that investing in people was as important as buildings or structures or roads, although those are important too. There are many projects out there, but few have the rate of return of early childhood investments, offering 10% annual rate of return. So for the same dollars, you can actually invest by training teachers and training children. But what comes out of it is a reduction in crime, the promotion of schooling, the fact that we're going to get a more skilled workforce in the future. There are very, very few government programs that have any return close to this. These rates of return calculations have not entered American political life to the extent they need to. This is not just speculation. This is not, I represent no lobby group. It's a piece of analytical work. Early childhood programs is one of the highest returns that we have on the docket right now available to make in American society. So it's foolish not to use it.
When we invest in early childhood care and education, we create the best outcomes in health, safety, and economic prosperity. We may not all define success exactly the same way, but whether it's economic development opportunities, successful students, thriving communities, or the workforce pipeline, early childhood investments are a critical piece.
We expect a lot from our little ones: national security, crime prevention, economic prosperity.
We all want children to have the opportunity to grow into happy, successful, contributing adults.
Become a First 2000 Days champion and a voice for young children. Share this message with your networks.
Encourage others to join our efforts.
Visit the website first2000days.org.